The comedy drama ANORA was one of the most awarded films of 2024. The neon picture, directed by Sean Baker, would win 5 Academy Awards, or Oscars as they're also known: Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, Best Film Editing, and Best Director, giving the movie's visionary Sean Baker, who was the screenwriter, editor, producer, and director, 4 Oscars. He's tied with Walt Disney for being the only other person to win 4 Oscars in one night, along with the movie's star, Mikey Madison, winning Best Actress. Mikey Madison stars as ANORA, or Annie as she goes by, a 23-year-old hustling erotic dancer and sex worker in Brooklyn. One night while working at the club, she's introduced to a young, wealthy Russian man, Ivan, who she ends up having a whirlwind romance with. But everything isn't what it seems. ANORA originally seemed to garner a lot of praise for its depiction and accuracy of sex work, showing Annie as a complex and nuanced character rather than just a stereotype, but after the praise died down, I've seen the general sentiment for ANORA online shift to being more negative. A couple days before the Oscars, I stumbled upon this Reddit thread from the popular celebrity gossip subreddit FauxMoi. I've been a longtime member and lurker of FauxMoi since it's been du mois. I don't agree with everything on the subreddit, obviously, and they do hold celebrities to an impossibly high standard, but it is one of the spaces online where I feel like women's issues are taken more seriously and discussed with more sympathy and nuance. So when I saw this seemingly innocuous thread about ANORA, it was just a link to a Mikey Madison interview where she was talking about how she was training with real strippers as teachers to improve her pole dancing scenes. But surprisingly, what I saw in the comments wasn't anything regarding the article, but rather the harm that ANORA, the film, has done to women and will continue to do if the movie wins any Oscars. There would be a highly upvoted post with awards and tons of comments under it praising the original post, starting with, "I think these women deserve better than Sean Baker and ANORA, and I think any win for ANORA is bad for women." And they would go on to have multiple paragraphs about their problems with ANORA, and the comments were filled with people saying, "One of the most deeply misogynistic film I've seen in years. It's bizarre how much misogyny is masquerading as feminism these days. And this film is entirely from the male gaze." So I want to look into the controversy and criticism around the movie ANORA, but also its strengths. Before that, though, I do want to say hi, I'm Felee. I make pop culture deep dives and commentaries on my YouTube, and I would appreciate if you would like or subscribe if you like the video or would like to see more content from me. I also want to say with my YouTube, I'm hoping to create a community of people who can look at pop culture more multifaceted and nuanced and maybe not jump to conclusions so quickly. I do want to be honest, I'm a little afraid to make this video because I do feel like in my mind when I post it, I fear the comment section will be a bloodbath. I know this is a topic that people have really strong opinions about, but I do feel like people are jumping to either ANORA is misogynistic slop or it's a feminist masterpiece, and I think the truth is somewhere in between. So first, let's get into the plot of the movie so we have context for the criticism. ANORA follows the hustling, rough-around-the-edges young erotic dancer who goes by Annie. One night while working at the club at the HQ, she's introduced to Ivan because of her ability to speak Russian. She explains because she had a Russian grandmother, and this one customer will change her fate forever. They start to flirt and seem to have pretty good chemistry. Most of her clients are normally older, and he's a young, attractive, rich guy. And after their night together at the club, she returns home to her humble apartment under the subway with her sister as her roommate. Ivan, or Vanya as he also goes by, continues to solicit Annie for her services outside of the club, inviting her to his home. He lives in this huge mansion, a contrast to how Annie lives. One theme that the movie explores is wealth and wealth inequality, and how Annie's working hard to survive and complains to her employers that she doesn't have health insurance or a 401k, while on the other hand, Vanya lives in this extravagant, opulent mansion with floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the waterfront, while he basically isn't doing anything and is playing video games and smoking all day. So Ivan's house in the movie is a real mansion located in Brighton Beach. The movie is shot on location in New York, and it's very much a love letter to the Russian American community in Brighton Beach, Coney Island, and Sheepshead Bay. After one of their trysts, Annie asks Vanya how he's able to lead such a luxurious life. He explains that his father is a well-known rich Russian man, Nikolai Zakharov. Ivan continues to solicit Annie, and lines begin to blur between Annie and Vanya's relationship, whether it's purely transactional or there is some genuine emotions behind their interactions. Yvonne asks Annie to come to his New Year's party at his house. Annie says she plans to work that night, but she agrees to come to the party with her friend Lulu. Lulu and Annie are taken aback by how impressive the mansion is and the party. The house is filled with young adults dancing and smoking and drinking and partying. They see Yvonne in his element, a very Great Gatsby-esque character, being the life of the party surrounded by his friends. Vanya asks Annie if she's available that night for work. Annie jokingly says that she has holiday rates, but it's a little bit like she's upcharging him, but still in a playful way, and they spend the night together. Annie wakes up and realizes how late it is and that she has to get back to the club. Vanya tries to stop her from leaving and then asks if it's possible for them to become exclusive, offering her $15,000 to be his girlfriend for the next week. Annie accepts the offer, takes a week off of work, and spends the time partying with Yvonne's friends, watching Yvonne play video games, having sex, smoking weed, and Yvonne's group, being impulsive and carefree, decide to take a private jet to Vegas, getting a luxurious suite and spending their time gambling, partying, doing drugs, and drinking. And in a scene with them laying in bed, they discuss that soon Vanya's actually going to have to go back to Russia to work for his dad's company, but then he starts joking that he could stay in America if he marries an American. They banter about who he could get married to and how maybe they could get married, but then Vanya takes it seriously and actually proposes to Annie.
Yes, let's get married.
You asshole.
Why?
Don't fucking cheese me with that shit, okay?
Annie,
Yeah?
will you marry me?
Seriously?
Seriously.
3 carats?
What about 4? Or 5? Or 6?
They rush to the chapel to get married in Vegas, a fairy tale whirlwind romance, leaving her job because now Yvonne can provide for her. She's living the dream. Annie's very impressed and intrigued by Vanya's life and wants to be a part of it and a part of the world he's in. A classic Cinderella story of a poor girl being taken in by a wealthy man, normally a prince, but it still follows the same dynamic of a rich man swooping her out of poverty to take care of her. And now their relationship is completely crossing out of transactional and apparently becoming a real marriage and relationship. And after their marriage, they go on a shopping spree, getting her a beautiful wedding ring, designer coats, and more, while she moves into the mansion. But then everything falls apart when word gets back to Yvonne's parents that he's gotten married. During a lazy afternoon where the couple is doing their fave activity of lying in their underwear cuddling on the couch while Yvonne vapes and plays video games while ANORA watches, Yvonne is getting nonstop messages on his phone. Annie inquires about how his parents feel about their marriage. Are they happy for him? Will they like her when they meet? Yvonne is dismissive and deflects the questions, but Annie realizes that something might be up. Garnek and Igor, 2 men that work for Yvonne's father, come to the house and start knocking on the door, demanding entry, and demanding for Yvonne to confirm that he's really married. Yvonne and Annie start to get hostile, yelling and screaming at Garnek and Igor. Then Toros, a family man who's in the middle of his child's baptism, is summoned by Garnek to come to the house and take care of the situation. Toros tells Yvonne over the phone that his parents are coming back from Russia to take him home, also demanding that they get their marriage annulled. Hearing this news about his parents, Yvonne begins to panic and tries to flee the house. Annie initially tries to go with him, saying she needs to get dressed, but once he realizes this may be his only chance to escape, he runs out of the house and leaves ANORA behind. Yvonne flees on foot while Garnek tries to chase him, and Igor tries to detain Annie and keep her in the house. She's a very scrappy and resourceful fighter. Igor tries to detain her, tying her up with the landline phone cord. She bites Igor and breaks Garnek's nose while trying to keep her in the house. The men are trying somewhat to be respectful of her, but they're also trying to keep her there, and she's still in her underwear and is being put in uncomfortable positions while she yells and screams at them. Toros explains that they're going to get their marriage annulled. Annie insists that the marriage is real and she loves Yvonne, he loves her, and that they're staying together. Shifting, another big theme in the movie of control and agency. When Yvonne and Annie are first flirting and getting together, it seems like she has all the control in their relationship and Yvonne is wrapped around her finger. finger. Yvonne has power from his wealth, but he would spend as much as he needed to keep ANORA. But now that facade of wealth and freedom she thought Yvonne had is shattering. Yvonne's main loyalty is not to her, but to his parents. Toros explains to Annie that this isn't even his house or his money, and his parents truly have control over everything he does. If Yvonne's parents want their wedding to be annulled, it's going to get annulled, even taking the wedding ring from her. Toros tries to reason with Annie, asking for her compliance, saying that he can give her $10,000 if she agrees to get the marriage annulled and help them find Yvonne.
Once we find Yvonne, which we will, and we get this thing annulled, which we will, you're gonna walk away with $10K fee and never ever contact Yvonne again. Is that understood?
She reluctantly agrees, but says she wants to talk to Yvonne first before she makes any decisions. So this odd group hits the road in search for Yvonne. Garnek is worried about possibly having a concussion and a broken nose. Toros is stressed beyond belief, and Igor sits quietly. They head to the Coney Island boardwalk to visit some of Yvonne's friends, Tom and Crystal, who work at a candy shop. They ask about Yvonne's whereabouts and if they've seen him. The men don't let Annie take the lead and escalate the situations. Igor then smashes some of the glass at the candy shop. Tom and Crystal try to call Yvonne, but he doesn't pick up. They ask for where his other friends may be, and they go look for Alex, who works at Tatiana's Grill. The crew rush into the kitchen and demand that Alex call Yvonne, but he doesn't pick up. Toros shows Yvonne's picture around the restaurant to see if anyone's seen him. Torres's car is almost taken by a tow truck. They drive it off of the tow truck in a very chaotic scene, continuing their search for Yvonne, but Garnek throws up in the car, so they have to stop their search and figure out what their next plan is. In these quiet moments where Toros and Garnek are going crazy, Igor and Annie start to hang back and banter a bit.
Yeah, I'm not getting back in there.
They decide their next plan of action is to go to the different clubs that Yvonne took Annie. They visit multiple where Yvonne has been seen, but he's currently not at any of them. Turns out that Yvonne is actually going to HQ, the club that Annie used to work at. And Annie's nemesis, Diamond, sees Yvonne at the club and revels in the fact that her husband is there looking for action and takes the opportunity to get him as a client. Annie's friend Lulu messages Annie that Yvonne is there, so the team rushes over to HQ. So they storm into the private room with Yvonne and Diamond, and they demand that Yvonne comes with them to get the marriage annulled so that they can complete their mission. Chaos follows this group everywhere they go. Annie and Diamond start to brawl in the club. Before Annie and Yvonne are taken out, Annie is frustrated because Yvonne is too drunk to have a conversation with. They are taken to the courthouse to annul the marriage. The hearing with the judge for their annulment again devolves into arguing and multiple voices talking at once until their story starts to become unintelligible. Annie reveals that they actually got married in Las Vegas, Nevada, so the marriage can't even be annulled in New York at the courthouse they're at. Annie begs Yvonne to take a stand against these men because they're taking Yvonne to the airport to see his parents, but he's too out of it to respond. They arrive at the airport, meeting Yvonne's mother and father. Annie tries to introduce herself and be friendly to Yvonne's mother, but she belittles her.
Меня зовут ANORA. Я очень рада наконец с вами познакомиться. Это такая честь быть женой Ивана и частью вашей семьи.
Ivan is not your husband. And you are not part of this family.
Yvonne won't stand up to his parents and gets on the plane to Vegas to annul the marriage. Annie begs him for an answer or to say anything, and Yvonne finally confirms to Annie that yes, they're getting a divorce, but their time together was fun.
So we're getting a divorce.
Of course! Are you stupid? And thank you for making my last trip to America so fun.
Annie is threatened by Yvonne's mother and decides to get on the plane. Igor, always standing in the back, witnesses this interaction and is impressed by Annie's bravery, hiding a smirk. While on their flight to Vegas, the family fights, and Annie overhears Yvonne call her a prostitute, and she yells across the plane that she was embarrassed to be with him and she's glad they're getting a divorce. So they go to the office and sign the papers to get their marriage annulled. Yvonne is very quiet during this time. Annie is upset, but she continues to go along with it and sign the papers. When they get up to leave, Igor asks Yvonne to apologize. He says he doesn't want to be out of line, but I think it would be appropriate if Yvonne apologizes to ANORA. The family does think it's inappropriate and out of line for him to say that, also saying that Yvonne has nothing to apologize for, while Yvonne says nothing.
And you are discussing hooker.
And your son hates you so much he married one to piss you off.
Igor escorts Annie back to New York. They spend the night at the mansion talking. We learn that crazy, chaotic, weird day they had yesterday was actually Igor's birthday. While they're talking, ANORA brings up the fight that they had when they first met. That ended with her getting tied up with the phone cord and being restrained. She then accuses Igor of wanting to R-word her during the fight. Igor denies this, but ANORA starts to antagonize him, saying that he wouldn't have done it because he's a F-slur ass bitch. So the following day, Igor drives Annie back to her apartment to drop her off in the snow. Igor gives ANORA back the wedding ring. ANORA seems reluctant to get out of the car and get back to her old life. She climbs over to his seat in the car and gets on top of Igor in a wordless interaction and initiates sex with him. He is confused and concerned, yet allows it to happen. That one's straight from the screenplay. Igor reaches for her face and starts to pull her in for a kiss, but she starts to resist, then pulls back and starts smacking him, before breaking into a sob and collapsing, finally breaking down for the first time in the movie. My initial opinions and interpretations of ANORA. After watching it, ANORA's a very messy, impulsive girl in her early 20s. She makes mistakes and convinces herself to commit to Vanya, a random billionaire's son, so she can stay in his life. She is seduced by his wealth and wants to believe in the fantasy that the people in his world and him will actually accept her and love her like they would anyone else and not look down upon her because of her profession. This ends up not being true, and a lot of Vanya's acquaintances and stuff say negative things about ANORA's profession, along with his mother. ANORA the film is an interesting look into the Russian American community in Brooklyn and New York. It was an interesting thing to learn about that I had no idea about. I felt like them going around to the different locations in Brighton Beach and Coney Island were very beautiful. Maybe this is basic of me, but it made me really want to go to Coney Island. It looked really cute and pretty. So I think Sean Baker and the rest of the creative team did a good job spotlighting that location and community, which I think did do a lot of heavy lifting, making the movie unique and interesting. Because without that aspect, I did feel like the movie was a bit expected with its storyline. The Cinderella story, it is interesting in this case, but it's not that different from what we've normally seen. I was reading some different articles about how sex workers felt like the movie portrayed ANORA and her work, and I got a lot of interesting insight, which I'm going to get into a little bit more in the next chapter, but I really do think the movie portrayed sex work in a positive and legitimate way, I guess I would say. Also, from what we know as Annie as a person, it doesn't seem like she was forced into sex work. She's doing it voluntarily. In the beginning montage of the movie, we can kind of see she loves it. She's really good at it. She's really good at finding men to be her clients and things like that. And she seems very confident at the beginning of the movie and very in control. That's why it led me to believe that she was in control of Vanya in the situation at the beginning of the movie, which was probably intentional. Like I was saying, the theme of control, because at this point she feels like she has all the power and control in the world, but then it all falls apart when his parents get involved. I also do want to say though, the first half of the movie did feel a bit like softcore porn. I was watching it with a group of my friends and it was kind of low-key let's watch porn together, which is a joke we have when we watch Bridgerton together. So I would say it's more explicit than Bridgerton though, just because of the oftenness we see the main characters have sex. Maybe I feel a bit prudish, but I did feel like it was a bit unnecessary. I guess this goes into the male gaze aspect of the movie and how it was directed. It does make me think if this movie was directed by a woman, would the sex scenes be differently, shot differently, maybe not shot so explicitly. Obviously what comes to mind to me is one of the other last movies I saw, which was another Oscar nomination for Best Picture, The Substance, directed by Carolee Fraja. Even though the main character, Elizabeth, she split into these two different bodies and then she was naked for 50% of the movie. One of them was always naked while the other person was living their life. Also, when they switched off, they would be naked. So we saw a lot of nudity in that movie. It didn't feel as voyeuristic, I would say, as the scenes in ANORA. Some of them just felt a little bit unnecessary in ANORA, but I never felt that way when I was watching The Substance. I was ooh, this is creepy or whatever. Especially because maybe we were really looking at her body through her eyes, so she wasn't viewing it in a sexual way. Even in that movie, I don't think we ever I know she has a hookup in that one scene, but I don't think it's explicit at all compared to what we see in ANORA. But I guess if you make a movie about sex workers, you'd want them to have sex in it a lot. Also, when watching with my friends, we were a little taken aback by Igor and Annie's interaction at the end of the movie when Annie asks Igor why he didn't want to rape her. The casual homophobia that follows when she calls him Spitch, kind of like, why would she say that? It's like a little bit, we were kind of like icked out, because I mean, when I think of ANORA, she's close to my age. She seems like a girl's girl. So I was like, oh, she would be like totally a gay ally, right? And I'm like, no, she's actually super homophobic for some reason. Maybe in Brooklyn that language is more common. So I did find it a little difficult to connect to ANORA just because she's so different from me. What she said in that scene, I was like, wait, maybe I don't get her. It just seemed a little surprising to me for a movie that just came out this year and is supposed to be set in modern day. I'm not saying like you can't use slurs at all in movies, but I don't know if it was showcasing anything interesting in this case. I would say no, unnecessary. I also accepted you don't have to like ANORA as a person to like the movie or any lead character in a movie. ANORA is very rude and abrasive to everyone in the film. At the end of the movie, Igor does make a comment about how he likes ANORA more than Annie. This other side of herself she keeps hidden under her rough exterior. But I was unsure of what Igor really saw that to be when I was watching the film, because I felt like we didn't really know ANORA that much. I wondered how much she really believed in Yvonne and how much she was playing him. Did she genuinely think that he would stand up to his family to be with her? Another interesting character, Igor, is kind of characterized as innocent and simple, following silently behind most of the chaos. He was really the only person throughout the whole crazy journey they went on who paid attention to Annie and what she wanted or needed throughout the movie, like offering her a scarf or offering her a drink. He is violent for his job. We do see him like smash the glass at the candy store. So him being the muscle, should we trust him, or is he someone that's dangerous to get involved with? When they start to get closer at the end of the film, I thought it was odd to introduce a potential new romance between Igor and ANORA. I was thinking she should just stay far away from this family and not interact with any of these people ever again after how they treated her. Obviously, it wasn't Igor's fault. He stood up for ANORA and said that Yvonne should apologize, so he understood the situation clearly, but he works for people that don't feel the same way. Igor giving Annie back her wedding ring was very sweet and cute and thoughtful. He also says, like, don't tell Toros, like he's just doing it because he knows they'll likely forget about it. Also, probably worth thousands of dollars and can definitely help her make more money back from the situation. I was thinking she did make $25,000 from the whole situation. Was that worth it? At least she got some money, but it was definitely not worth it. It was a terrifying and traumatic situation. Like I'm saying, it's interesting because a part of her trauma was caused by what Igor did to her at the beginning of the movie. Like, she didn't know what he was going to do, and if he was going to assault her like she said. So then the last scene, I feel like people have been interpreting a lot differently. I've seen online. I read ANORA initiating sex between Igor as not necessarily romantic. I think she views sex as an exchange in her line of work. She was thanking Igor for how much he paid attention to her and cared for her during this really scary time, and even giving her back the wedding ring, almost like payment, I guess, for what's about to happen. But it was a very strange and uncomfortable scene to watch, especially because it's like one long shot. And then it did seem like her last straw was him reaching for her face and wanting to look at her, maybe kiss her. Her looking into his eyes, I think, made it feel real, and that's what caused her to break down, because her last relationship that she wanted to believe in with Anya blew up in flames in this spectacular way. And for the first time, every emotion that she's been repressing for like the last 48 hours, or maybe even since she met Yvonne, and then she just devolves into sobbing. That was my way of interpreting the ending, but I've seen a lot of people say different things. I even saw some people say like, this was my favorite ending of a movie ever, and I was like, okay, it's thought-provoking, but that's a bit too much for me. This weird sex scene that they have in the car being like, that's kind of what I think when people are like, my favorite movie's ANORA. I'm like, why? If we cut out all of the sexy or naked scenes, would you care about it? This movie had a conservative budget of about $6 million. The film grossed $55 million worldwide, so is considered a huge success, making multiple times its budget back. It's Sean Baker's most successful film to date. Mickey Madison was handpicked by Sean Baker for this role, and they moved to Brooklyn to immerse themselves in the culture before filming the movie. And it was shot on Kodak 35mm film. Also, I will say the film was very pretty. The shots were very beautiful. So let's get back to the discussion of the portrayal of sex work in this film, because I would say that's where most of the praise for the film comes from. Sean Baker has a history of creating films centered around sex work or erotic dancing. In his previous films, Starlet, Tangerine, and Red Rocket, they all have lead characters who are in this line of work. When talking about Sean, Mikey Madison said, Sean has dedicated his career to destigmatizing sex work and telling stories about marginalized people. For ANORA, Andrea Werham, a former erotic dancer and escort, worked as a creative consultant. Sean Baker is working with Andrea to create a film based on her memoir, Modern Whore. The Rolling Stone, Hollywood Reporter, and Slate all interviewed sex workers and got their opinions on the film. So I pulled some quotes that I thought were interesting answers. One of them said, "We're seeing a fully developed character doing sex work without their profession defining them. That's what representation really is." While another said, "That's why I think this isn't just a fantasy for men. It's also a fantasy for strippers to watch a girl land it." And another said, "This save-a-hoe trope that someone walks into the club and says, 'I'll take you away,' and actually does, that's part of the fantasy, that there will be something real out of the context of the club. The stripper is offering a fantasy, but the man is doing that too." Risden Roberts wrote for Slate, "While so many sex worker films are quick to show us as weak to justify our circumstances or dole out suffering as retribution for our sins, Baker instead portrays Annie as strategic, scrappy, and a survivor. She's not a victim nor empowered in some post-feminist pseudo-spiritual way. She's just determined to get what's hers, be it money or her freedom. And nothing, not even a pair of burly mobsters, is going to stop her." This is something most films about sex workers ignore, but Baker and Madison managed to capture it convincingly. But in her article, she included a counterpoint from her friend saying, "Although Baker is a pretty stellar advocate, he still is a man. And few men, unless they're sex workers themselves, can really capture the experience of what it's like to do this job. It's written by a man and directed by a man. I don't care who was involved in the film, consulting-wise. This is ultimately a film from the male gaze. Haven't we seen enough of this?" So those are some different perspectives I found. When winning awards, Mikey Madison and Sean Baker will also thank and dedicate their awards to sex workers.
I also just want to again recognize and honor the sex worker community.
I want to thank the sex worker community. They have shared their stories. They have shared their life experience with me over the years. My deepest respect. Thank you. I share this with you.
So they do seem to be pretty sincere advocates and allies. I think female leading movies like these always get this sort of criticism, and this is similar to what I saw with Poor Things and Yorgos Lanthimos. I feel like Mikey Madison's role parallels Emma Stone's role in Poor Things a bit. Like, she spends a portion of the movie doing sex work, and I would say it's portrayed as a positive experience that she enjoyed until in Poor Things she just decided that she was kind of over it, and then in ANORA she was like, well, I don't need to do it anymore because I have a rich man. So I think the conversation around if these films are truly feminist is kind of like too complex because it really depends on how you're viewing it. It can kind of be both. It is progressive in the way that ANORA is represented, but it is ultimately a film from the male gaze. And that can be okay, but I think some people question his motivations for wanting to make this movie. And one of the reasons for that is the conversation around intimacy coordination. So one of the major controversies that ANORA had related to ANORA not having an intimacy coordinator.
Did you have an intimacy coordinator? That's the big thing now these days, right?
For our film, we didn't. It was a choice that I made, that the filmmakers offered to me if I wanted to bring on an intimacy coordinator or not. Mark Eidelstein, who plays Yvonne in the film, we decided that it would be best just to keep it small with us, and then Sean Baker, the director, and Sammy Kwan, his producing partner, and his wife. And so I think that it was a very positive experience for me.
In the post-Me Too era Hollywood, there's been a lot of discussion around intimacy coordinators being hired to oversee productions. This concept became mainstream when, in 2018, when HBO announced that all of their productions would have intimacy coordinators. Here's a headline from an article at the time: How HBO is Changing Sex Scenes Forever. Screen Actors Guild defines intimacy coordinator as an advocate, a liaison between actor and producer, and a movement coach and/or choreographer concerning nudity and simulated sex and other intimate hyperexposed scenes. For performers, an intimacy coordinator provides an important safety net for performers while working in hyperexposed scenes that respects the boundaries of actors. For the production company, an intimacy coordinator ensures the safety of personnel in hyperexposed scenes, facilitates coordination between production departments to fulfill the director's vision, and help reduce financial, insurance, or market-related risks, as well as avoid any unnecessary production delays. So this shift towards having intimacy coordinators isn't exactly that surprising to me, given everything we saw with Me Too. Also, I feel like almost every female actor I've seen has given an interview, especially child actors, where they're talking about kissing scenes being extremely uncomfortable, especially if it's like a first kiss for the actor. And I'm gonna include some clips here, but that was the first thing I thought of when I heard about intimacy coordinators.
I feel like I should get mine out of the way because mine is not that exciting.
Okay.
I
want to hear all about it.
All of my
Every detail.
first handful of kisses were all on TV, and they were all awkward.
Mine too. Same thing for me too.
Your first kiss was on TV?
You know what's funny is when she was 14 when we started the show. I was like 19, right?
Right.
And they're like, okay, you guys are going to be making out in this scene. And I'm like thinking like, wait, this is like slightly illegal,
that's
right?
probably your first kiss ever, right?
He was my first kiss. What's someone bet you made with Danny about our first kiss?
No, it wasn't the first kiss.
No,
This was like
go
a
ahead,
second or
Ashley.
third kiss.
It was the first. It was like the first week.
Let me tell you about that.
No, okay, so I've never kissed a guy. So I was so. I mean, you know, Ash was attractive, and I was a 14-year-old little girl, and I was extremely scared for my life.
Sure.
And he was very nice about it. He was like, "Oh, don't worry." So I was like, "Okay." Then Danny goes to him and goes, "Dude, I'll give you $10 if you French kiss her." What would he stick your tongue in my mouth or some?
What? No.
For $10.
You're making. So Danny bets me like $20 that I wouldn't do it, and of course I'm like, yeah, sure. What's the deal? You know?
And then the cop showed up and you got arrested, pretty much.
They should have,
He
but they
never
didn't.
did it. And
I so did.
He
I so
claims to
did.
this day he did that. I swear.
Mila,
never,
I so did it.
He never did it?
I
so
didn't let
did
him.
it.
I think he tried, but I think I kept my mouth so
Yeah,
Come on.
yeah. You did the old teeth block?
Yes.
Yeah,
You
you
didn't
didn't
let him do the teeth block.
Yeah,
You were like,
that's right.
oh,
Yes, he never got his
You were
tongue
very
in.
excited.
No, you didn't.
Our lips are touching. He's moving his mouth around a bit, but I can't move mine. I'm frozen. His eyes are closed. Mine aren't. Mine are wide open, staring at him. It's so odd, staring at a person while your faces are touching. I don't like it. I can smell his hair gel. Move your head around a bit more, Jeanette, the creator yells from off camera. I try to do as the creator tells me. I honestly try, but I can't bring myself to do it. My body is stiff, unflinching. My body is rejecting my mind. My mind is saying, who cares that this is your first kiss, that your first kiss is on camera? Get it over with. Do what you're told. My body is saying, no, I don't want this. I don't want my first kiss to be like this. I want my first kiss to be a real first kiss, not a kiss for a TV show. Cut! The creator yells off camera, his mouth full of something. I hear his footsteps as he pads over to us, carrying a paper plate piled with cheese slices and unwrapped mini candy bars. The crew parts like the Red Sea, letting the creator pass by them and walk up to us. The creator looks me right in the eye but doesn't say anything for 4 or 5 seconds. I almost start to laugh, thinking he might be messing with me for fun like he does sometimes. But then I recognize that there is a deep anger in him. This is no time for laughter. Finally, he speaks. Jeanette. More head movement. He turns and walks away. Why aren't we rolling? He shouts. The cameras roll. We start the scene. I don't even know the words coming out of my mouth, but I trust that they must be the words that were written on the page because nobody's stopping me and saying I'm speaking gibberish. It's an out-of-body experience, doing the scene leading up to the kiss. My heart is pounding. My hands are clammy. Here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. We lean in. Our lips touch. Lips feel nasty. They're like little gross fleshy piles of flesh. It's disgusting to be a person. Shoot, I'm supposed to move my head. I start moving it. Back and forth, back and forth. I sway it around. It doesn't feel natural, so I'm sure it doesn't look natural. Nathan, as his character Freddy, finally breaks away. Cut! The creator shouts. I can tell by his tone that he isn't happy. He looks to the assistant director. Do we have time for another? Not really, sir. We've got to head to scene J if we're going to wrap up on time. Fine, he says angrily. That was not ideal, but fine, we'll move on. I'll be at Crafty. The creator storms off, heading to Crafty for his chips or his bagel or his minestrone soup. I watch him go. I'm sad I didn't please him. Hey, we're done, Nathan says kindly, knowing how nervous I was to do my first on-screen kiss with him. Yeah, I say with a nervous half-laugh. We're done. Just like that, my first kiss is over with. And my second kiss, and my third kiss, and my fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh, technically, since we did 7 takes.
There are so many stories of actresses feeling uncomfortable or unsafe on sets, and often because they don't feel it's a safe space to speak up because they don't want to, ruin the production or make people mad or anything like that. They just go along with it. For example, Kate Winslet would tell the New York Times in 2024, I would have benefited from an intimacy coordinator every single time I had to do a love scene or partially naked or even kissing scene. It would have been nice to have had someone in my corner because I always had to stand up for myself. The first time I heard about intimacy coordinators was discussion around the HBO teen drama Euphoria. Euphoria came under fire for its egregious sex scenes. The conversation would especially surround Sydney Sweeney, who was a character in a lot of the nude scenes in the show. But Sydney Sweeney would clarify that she always felt safe on the set of Euphoria and she's totally comfortable when filming. It's important to always have an intimacy coordinator, even if it's not a sex scene and it's making out or something like that. It adds another level of comfort. I'm really lucky because all of my castmates are so kind. It's a very safe and credible environment to do scenes in. And having an intimacy coordinator adds a level of, I feel okay, I feel safe, and this is for my character. And this is a really nice statement from Sydney Sweeney, but Euphoria's director, Sam Levinson, would go on to make another series, The Idol, starring Lily Rose Depp. And in the series, in the first episode, the character is doing a photo shoot, and the intimacy coordinator doesn't want her to pose nude in the photo shoot because it wasn't agreed upon by her label. The nudity rider has already been put into place. But basically everyone, including the star, just finds this guy annoying and like getting in the way. So not wanting to delay the photo shoot, a member of her team locks him in a closet. So this idea of intimacy coordinators being a bit of a nuisance on set and unnecessary has also started to spread. And I think the criticism of ANORA not having an intimacy coordinator kind of feeds into this category, because while some are advocating for the importance of these roles, others portray intimacy coordinators as somewhat useless. Here are some quotes I found of actors being a bit more dismissive of intimacy coordinators. A lot of them are from older generations, which makes me think that maybe it's a bit more of a generational divide. I think that's what makes ANORA not having one more shocking, because most of the cast members are pretty young. Actress Jennifer Aniston would reject having a intimacy coordinator on The Morning Show. Actor Michael Douglas said, "It feels like executives taking control away from filmmakers, but there's been some terrible faux pas and harassment. Sex scenes are like a fight scene. It's all choreographed. In my experience, you take responsibility as a man to make sure the woman is comfortable. You talk it through." The Game of Thrones actor Sean Bean condemned the use of intimacy coordinators, claiming that their inclusion ruins the spontaneity of romantic scenes. Quote, I think the natural way lovers behave would be ruined by someone bringing it down to a technical exercise. Younger up-and-coming Hollywood actress Rachel Ziegler would say, "Intimacy coordinators establish an environment of safety for actors. I was extremely grateful for the one we had on West Side Story. They showed grace to a newcomer like myself and educated those around me who have years of experience. Spontaneity in intimate scenes can be unsafe. Wake up." Oscar-winning Best Actress Emma Stone told NPR,
"Well, first of all, I don't think having an intimacy coordinator is even a choice anymore. I think in the past 5 years, the industry has changed a lot for the better. And, you know, I did think, okay, well, Yorgos and I have made 3 films together. I feel very comfortable with him. The DP, Robbie Ryan, and we did The Favorite together. Feel comfortable with him. Our first AD is a woman, Haley, who's incredible. Our focus puller is a woman. You know, I felt like I'll be fine in this circumstance, and these are my friends, and I know everybody well. But when Elle McAlpine came in, our intimacy coordinator, I felt so stupid that I thought that wouldn't be a necessary situation, because having her there felt like having both a safety net and a choreographer and a hand to hold. And, you know, she and I would text after a day of doing some of these scenes and just sort of say how we were feeling and what was going on. And it was just this really beautiful relationship that I found extremely, extremely meaningful.
So you can definitely see how some people don't agree with Sean Baker and Mikey Madison's portrayal of intimacy coordination. Sean Baker would say,
"We're our own intimacy coordinators, actually." We for me, my philosophy on it, or my stance on it, is that it's a case-by-case basis, a film-by-film basis, and it's always should be offered to the actors, and if they want one, then yes, of course. But as producers, all 3 of us, our priority is, you know, safety and comfort of our actors on set. And I've directed many over my career, so I was actually very comfortable with it. It was just if Mikey and Mark were as well, and yes, they were. So that's how we did it.
We would discuss exactly how she was shot and what Mikey and Mark would want on set. If they wanted a intimacy coordinator, they could have one. But I think we were just so in sync by the time we got to production that it was a very casual thing. Yeah. Now I have my wife and producer Samantha Kwan present, and being a producer myself, safety and the comfort level of my actors are the number 1 priority. So, you know, it's just done in quite a clinical way. It's just like we get the shot and move on.
Yeah. Intimacy coordinators in the industry took offense to how intimacy coordination is talked about with ANORA and have voiced why they think intimacy coordination is important and necessary, and it's not something to have only if people request it. To me, what Sean Baker said about, like, we'll have one if an actor requests it is kind of like giving me that he thinks they'd get in the way and he wants it to be like artsy and real and authentic and intimate, like between ANORA and him as a director. Because I do feel like they're marketing this movie in a bit of like a director and his muse type of way. And I think the introduction of intimacy coordinator like puts a layer between that, which I don't think they want for the movie. I think they're dismissing the fact that like in other circumstances, other people have felt unsafe. This does put me off from Sean Baker a bit because I feel like he's not understanding that like an intimacy coordinator shouldn't be optional. It should be a requirement because you don't know when problems could happen. And it's great that everyone feels safe on your set. That's not always the case. So you want actors to be protected. And I feel like that's part of advocating like for sex work and things like that, because that is like safety and comfort on sets or at your job or whatever. So I don't know. It seems odd to me. I feel like this is almost counter from what I thought he believed as like a pro sex work person. So now that we've discussed the plot of the movie and some of the criticism and conversation around it, I want to go back to the original post that made me want to make this video. I'm actually looking at it right now and the user who made it deleted their profile because I don't think this post is like that crazy controversial, but maybe people are really passionate about it and maybe I should be afraid to make this video. Now that we have the context, I'm going to read through the Reddit post from the user River Runs Through It. Rest in peace. And then we can discuss if we agree or not with their take. They write, I think these women deserve better than Sean Baker and ANORA, and I think any win for ANORA is bad for women. If this many people are okay with awarding Baker, who, from the film's text alone, shows women to be shallow playthings that need to be saved by the right guy, it's concerning. This movie is the concluding chapter of his trauma tourism arc, but this time, instead of casting Defoe as his self-insert, he wrote himself into the movie as a guy who holds ANORA down and ties her up while positioning himself behind her in that comedic scene that's obviously referencing essay imagery but presenting it as a laugh. It's weird that he, 53, wrote this role for a then 23-year-old where he has her act out all of his fetishistic fantasies and then ends it with his film bro workshopped ending of #NotAllMen. It's also dangerous positioning men as mostly harmless within this context, which is often not the case. It's interesting that he said in a recent interview that he would never work with A-list actors. You can't control A-listers. An established actor wouldn't be offered the option of an intimacy coordinator, they'd expect and get one. Any big win for ANORA further legitimizes this movie for the zealous film bros who love telling women and sex workers who are critical of the film that they just don't get it. That's who this movie is for, not the marginalized people Baker exploits and profits off of. He's a rich, cis, het, white guy engaging in the most sinister type of trauma tourism, doling it out every 2 years with a different Instagram filter and calling it high art, and this out-of-touch industry is awarding him for it. I also want to read the top comment under this post from Blonde, Bored and Baked. They said, it's bizarre how much misogyny is masquerading as feminism in art these days. Stop letting men make movies about marginalized women. It's not lost on me that these movies get nominated for Oscars. While movies made by women that depict the female experience are ignored. I also want to remind everyone that Oscar voters are 81% white, 67% male, and 86% over the age of 50. This commenter is definitely not charitable towards Sean Baker as a person and feels like his intentions are unpure and twisted for wanting to make ANORA. I don't think it's completely uncalled for given some of the questionable moments in ANORA, and it's natural to question his motivations for wanting to make this film. Why did it include a scene replicating sexual assault towards a sex worker, but it's subversive in the way that he doesn't assault her? Just because the lead in ANORA is a woman doesn't necessarily make the film feminist. I feel like the movie is expected, but not exactly progressive, and I do agree that it's a bit overhyped. It seemed to me what voters resonated with is how ANORA had a small budget, no big stars, and was an independent film. When I watch indie movies, I often think if this was made by a bigger film studio, what would they change to make the movie more profitable and mainstream? And ANORA did have some of those moments where I don't think characters would say or do the same things in a mainstream movie, and they are more out of the box. Sean does seem very passionate about sex work and wanting to uplift the community, and Mikey did a lot of work to make her portrayal of Annie authentic. It's your choice if you feel Sean is a legitimate ally, like I included in the other articles saying what ANORA got right and wrong about sex work. Some interviewed felt like he was a good ally while others didn't. ANORA won 5 Oscars, which is huge, and it's sad seeing a movie like The Substance not getting as much praise. And I've seen a lot of people in particular pitting Demi Moore from The Substance and Mikey Madison from ANORA against each other. In The Substance, Demi Moore plays an aging starlet who gets disposed of on her 50th birthday from the industry, and she does this experimental procedure to make her second self sue. and people liken Mikey Madison to Demi Moore as Sue is to Elizabeth, which unfortunately does fit well, but I feel like the animosity between the two stars isn't necessary. But I saw so many people sharing the sentiment of like, Hollywood's just proving the substance right and all that. I mean, it's not Mikey's fault, and I don't think she should be getting hate for that. But I actually don't think ANORA's win was that unexpected. After the Oscars, The Guardian wrote an article, ANORA is nothing new. Hollywood has always been obsessed with sex workers, where they wrote that in the 97 years of the Oscars, the Best Actress or Supporting Actress awards have gone to actors playing sex workers 16 times, from Elizabeth Taylor to Jane Fonda to Emma Stone to now Mikey Madison. This article links to a 1996 New York Times article titled Play a Hooker, Win an Oscar, where they're discussing this same phenomenon like 20 years ago. I would never take away the achievement of winning an Oscar, but it's all very subjective. Every voter has their own biases and opinions, just like all of us do. And the message that the voters want to get behind and send for ANORA winning seemed like their support for independent movies and detachment from mainstream cookie-cutter movies. It winning 5 awards, though, is still surprising to me, especially the screenplay, because after reading the screenplay, I felt like there was a lot of improvisations. I also found out while researching the movie that ANORA is the 5th highest movie with the most fucks in it, at 479, which is about 3.5 times per minute. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts about ANORA. What was your initial interpretation, and what do you think about it now? Do you think it deserved all the Oscars it won? Why do you think it won so many Oscars? What was the Academy trying to say with its win? Or do you think people are looking too much into it? Did you find ANORA more progressive or feminist than a movie like Poor Things? Or do you feel like the outrage is unnecessary? Let me know what you think.